welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on all stuff leadership. This is episode number 6. These are flying by. And again, one of my most favorite things to do is just to break down all kinds of different stuff with leadership. And I love to do that with a guest. And today is certainly a special treat because we've got a very special person on today. Helen Sullivan is somebody that I've gotten a chance to know and gotten close to over the last number of years, probably 6-7 years, who is a leader in the hospitality industry, without a doubt, certainly an industry that's getting an impact and requires great leadership now. So what a perfect time to have someone like Helen on. But Helen is so unique in the sense that she's one of those individuals that has such a huge impact on people, much larger than just the people, the scope of influence that she has. But we all know people that just, they attract people and they really leave them better off than they found them. So Helen is certainly a great example of somebody like that. Helen, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I've really enjoyed all of your podcasts, and we always had, and we always do, as a friend, have great conversations about leadership, and it's so intriguing, and I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thanks. I love that. And I agree. We've always had these really cool, great conversations, and I've always learned from you. And I think we've helped each other and learned from each other. So today is
Absolutely.
really cool to have you on the show. And why don't we just start off? There's so many questions I want to ask you, and I want to dive into some stuff. But why don't you just for the audience, just share a little bit about yourself? You know, what your story is, how you got into doing what you're doing right now, all that kind of good stuff.
Thank you, John. I actually I started in the restaurant business 25 years ago. And in that time, I started it off as a part-time job, like most of us do. We're going back to school, and I was finishing up my undergraduate, and then I was going into my graduate degree, and a friend of mine turned me on to a restaurant company, and I got a part. I started as a server, and what happened was, as time went on, I went into become a bartender, and that all took off. And then, as I realized when I was going through my master's degree, I came to a screeching halt because my degree is in being a therapist and social work. And what happened to me was I could not focus. I could not do the paperwork. I couldn't do the computer work. I couldn't do what was asked of me. So I turned to my own, um, the restaurant industry, because I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So
Mhm.
I'm like, well, what can I do here? How can I change here? And I, went to some of the leaders in my company and said, I want to be a part of. So they gave me a position to open restaurants, and I loved it. I loved it because that was my first chance to really lead in a professional sense.
Mhm.
And that's where it began. So I did not complete and pursue the career of a therapist,
Mhm.
but I did continue my career in restaurants, and that really took off from there. We got to design new concepts, and we got to have large amounts of people and teach them about the guest and how to interact with the guest and how to be your best. And it
Mhm.
was just truly remarkable
Well,
how to treat your guest.
yeah, and it sounds like you found what you love doing, which is so much of leadership. It's passion, and your passion seems to be people. I mean, you just have this unbelievable way to connect with people and draw people in and really want to bring out the good in people and whatnot. It sounds like you know right away when you got into leadership that, wow, this is the right thing, this is my calling, or did it take a little bit?
It took a little bit. I mean, I think it took a little bit because when I was leading, the fears get away with you and in your mind, and sometimes you think, am I saying the right thing? Am I leading the right way? is the person on the other end receiving it correctly, perception. So yeah, I was quite, I was afraid in the beginning, and but as time went on and things had changed in my life, the fear quieted and the leadership took over. And then I felt I was there, that I had arrived, and that I want to do more. How do I do this on a larger scale? And I kept doing it. Part of leadership, I think, is reinventing yourself. And you have to constantly do that. You have to constantly. I mean, I've reinvented myself with our company um, many, many, many times. Staying with the same company for 25 years, you have to reinvent yourself to stay fresh and to stay
Hmm.
motivated.
So let me ask you that because I hear people talk about or ask the questions about, okay, I want to be consistent. I've got to stay, you know, true to who I am. I've got to make sure I'm not this person that's, unpredictable. And then on the other hand, I hear you and other very successful leaders talk about the importance of that, of reinventing yourself. What exactly does that mean to somebody who's kind of hearing that for the first time as it relates to leadership?
That's a great question, John. So many times, people say words to us, but how do you actually do it? How do you actually reinvent yourself? Um, for me, I have to stay the best version of who I am. And over the years, I've learned that the version of me is upbeat, positive, passionate, and engaging. When I feel not engaged, then I know there's a problem. So I have to look at that, and I have to, talk with others, um, maybe, do some reading, really hone into why am I bored? Why am I not engaging? Because that'll take me out of my authentic self. And when that happens, I'm not I'm not leading,
Hmm.
you know. I hear so many times people say lead from example. Sometimes that's not true. Sometimes leading by example, I've tried that, I've tried that. And recently, leading by example isn't enough. I'm finding the people that I'm leading are of a younger generation, and that's great, but it's not the lead by example. It's more coaching. People want to be coached.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm finding. That's so when I say reinvent myself, it's probably not me that I'm reinventing, but ways to lead. I'm
Hmm.
reinventing. More reading, more of, finding out
Hmm.
what does your employee or what does your person that you're leading need from you?
Well, and that's such a great point, and it sounds like what you're talking about is you evolve over time and you really get to understand the people that you're working with and that you're leading with. And I think that's a mistake a lot of leaders make. They don't understand the importance of leadership flexibility and adaptability and situational leadership. And everybody's different. We all have different
Absolutely.
backstories. We all have different hot buttons and even personality styles. It's much different
Oh,
to lead somebody who's one personality style versus another. You've got, different um, differences in generations and all kinds of stuff that causes certain types of leadership to be effective or not. Um,
yeah. And I'll tell you, John, in the restaurant business, you could not have more personality styles. I couldn't imagine. I think every person I know is a different personality style. So you've got to switch hats constantly.
yeah. Well, it's interesting, and I've seen you do that. I mean, I've seen. So that's an interesting question too. How do you do that? So you have, because from an onlooker's point of view, I've seen you in action, and it seems like you deal with that driver mentality as well as you deal with an analytic or an amiable or somebody who's loud and boisterous versus somebody who might be shy. How do you do that? And you make it seem pretty effortless.
I, I've learned something. over the years, and that's reading your guest, you know. And when I say read your guest, I also mean read your internal guest. So my guest, when the internal guest is my coworkers, and the guest obviously is the guest that comes into the restaurant and wants to have an experience. You know, I'm very loud and boisterous and carried away and passionate. I have to know my audience. You know, if I have guests that are just, quieter, that maybe they don't want to engage, then I have to switch gears and be like, okay, they want silent service, but they still want service. Then you have people that want to be pulled in. They may not want to, contribute, but they want to be a part of. And that's what really, gets my passion and gets me really excited is that it becomes a social venue, that the entire bar is having a great time as if they walked into, their best friend's party and they're
Hmm.
being included.
Yeah.
We all want to be included.
Hmm. Well, when you said earlier, and I agree 100%, people feel like they want to be part of a winning team. They want to be part of something, an organization that's moving in the right direction, that's having a positive impact, that's having a positive influence. And you've got all times, sometimes that's easier than others, right? I mean, right now, some people maybe listening to this podcast, down the road, but it's currently the end of March. We're in the height of what's in a coronavirus pandemic here, and we're locked into our houses. It's a really, really unusual time. I mean, none of us have ever seen anything like this, and there's a major unknown that's ringing in everybody's head. It's just the anxiety that's created with what's possibly going to happen, or what people don't know is going to happen. How long is this going to last? How serious is it going to get? And I want to talk to you about that because it's obviously had a major, major impact on you and your team. But before we get into it specifically, you had mentioned that you focus on keeping yourself upbeat, passionate, engaging. How do you do that in times like this? And when you're not having great times, what do you do personally to make sure you're still got that attitude that you have?
Well, part of my story, John, is, as I grew older too, and being in this business, I've also become sober. And one of those things is that isolation for a sober individual is not a good thing, not a good thing at all. So we have to figure out, and what I mean by that is in our minds. Our minds are a dangerous little place, and the negativity goes crazy when you just hang out with your mind. So you have to get out of your mind and you have to do a few things. One of the things that I do personally is I limit my time on social media. I go on to connect, but then I limit my time because that can bring on all kinds of thoughts. Another thing I do is I limit my time watching the news. This doesn't mean that I stop, it means that I put my devices on notification for breaking news, for, press conferences, and so forth. So I do that. I limit because I can't have negativity. That'll kill me. So, we do things like that. So that helps a lot. And, I set up meetings through Zoom to help other individuals that are sober like myself. And that keeps the best version of me, keeps me away from negativity.
Hmm. How important do you think that is as a leader? Your own state of mind and your own emotions.
Extremely important. Extremely important. I brought up a just a quick little analogy about being on an airplane. And what it was is you put that mask on first before you help anybody else. So if I'm not in a good frame of mind, it's very difficult to lead because, you may lead in frustration,
Hmm.
anger, irritability. Those are all things that are not good for any team. So nobody wants to have that part of it. Does it mean that it doesn't happen? Of course it happens. We're human, but we have to limit that. We have to engage in a way that's patient.
Hmm. What do you think, in your experiences as a leader, what has been the most challenging thing for you?
Staying um staying grounded, staying patient, let the little things go. It's not a big deal. Um, because I think for every leader, we all have our landmines. But maybe our employees or our coworkers don't know what those landmines are, but we do. We have landmines. And what I mean by that is we step on each other's landmine and then, the other person just blows up, gets really frustrated, and you have no idea. For example, I don't know, say you didn't fill up the salt and pepper shakers, or whatever. Why is Helen freaking out over the salt and pepper shakers? And it had nothing to do with that, and you stepped on a landmine. So you have to know your personal triggers.
Hmm. And you have to be tolerant of others too, because that's a great point. You just don't know what's going on in somebody's world. I mean, you don't know what happened that morning that might put somebody in a real bad place. So that's a great point.
Yeah, and I do that also with my guests. You don't know what they came from. When people walk in that door, you don't know what's going on with them. You don't know if they just dropped off a loved one. You don't know if, a loved one's sick in the hospital and they haven't slept in 3 days, or they just lost someone to death. You don't know what's going on, or they lost their job. I mean, in this, and we'll talk later on in the podcast, but this crisis, has got everyone scared.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that, and I want to ask you more questions as well about your experiences up to this point. But right now, you're facing the biggest challenge I think that probably any leader is facing, and that's what's happening now in the current environment and the steps, the things that have happened recently. You want to share that a little bit with the group?
Sure. As some of you will know, the restaurant business has come to a screeching halt. In the state of Massachusetts, it was pronounced last Monday, which would have been the 16th, March 16th. We were told that all restaurants were to be shut down. So there's no warning, and we all know it was the right thing to do to stop the spreading of the coronavirus. So as that happened, my entire team was in panic. So the best thing to do, um, I feel, when people are panicking, is to calm them down. And how do you do that? You do that with information. You do that with correct information and helping them and figuring out, okay, what can you do for income as of right now?
Hmm. So that's an incredibly difficult situation that you and everybody is in now, where your livelihood has just been really, the pause button totally, and you have no, means. Most of the people in that entire industry do not have an opportunity to really continue to earn a living right now. So it is very difficult. And how do you manage that? What do you do as a leader? I mean, how can you support people?
Well, what I did is got accurate information that people could go and apply for unemployment, and that would be some income coming into their household. Um, we started a large text that included the employees on it. So on a daily basis, we're helping one another, whether it's filling out forms, talking to healthcare, jokes, whatever it's taking for each other to get through this time of social distancing. This has helped in a lot of ways because some people may not be able to fill out those forms, or what do I do about healthcare, or there was a many questions. So that helped calm people down to that, call your credit cards or call your car payments, your insurance, talk to them. Talk to them and tell them what has occurred, and I'm sure, there's some help out there.
Hmm.
Funds.
Yeah. And what has been some of the things that you've learned? I mean, obviously, it's been a week, I'm sure, of being thrust into all these new situations and new experiences. What are some of the things that you've learned in this last week?
Well, I've learned that um, many people out there want to help. I've learned that we do it together, and I had to learn a little bit about technology so that I could put up meetings with people. I learned, and and that was challenging, but it was fun at the same point. But I learned that I have more endurance than I thought I did to help others.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you have done a phenomenal job, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the specifics and some of the ways that other people can help you and the others that you're working with and that you care about. But that's it's interesting that you said that people genuinely want to help, and what's pretty amazing is that and over the last week I've spoken to tons and tons of leaders and people in all different types of industries, and there hasn't been one that I have spoken to that hasn't felt an impact, and mostly very negative, and there's a lot of anxiety, and it's nice to know that even in light of that, when people are hurting themselves and anxious and stressed, that they're still willing to help other people, and that kind of comes down to just the good in people, and you tend to bring that out. I think that's something that you have for sure. But tell us, so you've tell us a little bit about what you've done, Helen, because I know you've really gone a few steps above and beyond to really try and help all of the people that you've influenced, and more, gone the extra mile. Share with the audience a little bit about what you've done.
Well, John, I really was shy about it, when I was thinking about this, and it was really my regulars that brought it up to me, and texted me and said, "Hey, I think you should start a GoFundMe page." And it was hard because I was like, well, the whole entire industry is, dealing with the same thing, and so I really had to grapple with it, and figure out, should this be done or not? And I took the risk. I took the risk and just said, you know what? I cannot, I am able to do this. I want to do this for our team and get the team involved and put this out. And I was able to start a GoFundMe page and, through the writing and contact people that I know, and just kind of put the word out. And it was hard. I grew up in a household, in an Irish household, that says, only the strong survive, and that meant you do it yourself. You don't ask anybody for anything. So as I've changed, as I've become, you know different. And as I've, become sober and an individual, I ask for help all the time. Well, I've learned to ask for help. So when it became, bigger than us, I said, we need help. And put your pride down, put your ego down. We need help. I need help to help others to, put food on the table, or to watch their children, or, health care, whatever they need, you know, I
Mhm.
got to do something.
Well, and that this people are dealing with some real significant issues. Just putting food on the table, roof over their head, keep their car and everything, and that's a major problem. And that's you're absolutely right. You've got to when you ask for help and you put it out there, there's people that will help. So I'm hoping that part of what comes from this is we get your message out a little bit louder and even to some more people. And for those people that do want to help, we'll attach that the link into the podcast. But where would they go if they wanted to contribute to that, Helen?
It's actually GoFundMe/Oysteria Family.
Okay, great. And again, we'll put that link in the announcement for the podcast and the podcast itself. Um, so Helen, let's when you think about yourself and you think about your own kind of the people that have influenced you, was there someone in particular that really had a big impact in you and kind of made you the person that you are, or turned you into a leader like you are? And who would that be?
Wow, that's a big question, John. If I had to choose, I think it's just how I grew up, and my mom was the leader in our family. I'm the youngest of 10 children, and my mom was the breadwinner. She took care of us, and she made sure that we were okay. I mean, it was her strength that I always admired. So definitely, my mom was my hero.
So your mom
Um,
brought brought up 10 kids. That is
she
unbelievable.
sure did. She
Wow.
sure did, and she did that. She was pregnant every year for 9 years, and then 9 years later came me. So I was joked about as the tumor. So I was her
Wow.
tumor.
Wow.
So I think I came out with everything. Her
Mhm.
tumor. We all are outgoing, but I think we're all people. I come from a family of that like to help people,
Well, and that's so
so
that
that's where it came from.
I can see that's for sure. Yeah. What when so is your family all close? Are they nearby geographically?
Yeah, yeah, I do have some family members in California, in Arizona, and Seattle, but mostly everyone's local.
Mhm. Well, that's great, and that's so you feel like that was your upbringing helped that kind of develop in you that feeling that you want to help other people, and do you feel like that had something to do with your desire to get into a leadership position?
I think, partly too was my education. I had gone to UMass Boston and Boston University, and for some reason, it was the studying that really made me feel like I wanted to be a part of, that I wanted to lead. And I just, and I've always had this dream of being an actress. So I think, I where I'm not on stage, I am on my own little stage. So I've always wanted that, because I think just to take someone out of feeling badly, or feeling irritated, or feeling less than. I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted, because I struggle with those things.
Hmm.
I struggle. with those feelings. So I think by me struggling, I've always wanted to help others not feel that way, and whether it's a small step or a big step. And when I always train people over the last 25 years, I always say to the people that are going to teach or that they're going to train, is say, listen, no one wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror, and says, I can't wait to do a bad job today.
Right.
They don't. They don't. So no one wants to do a bad job. So if you think someone's not doing what your expectations are, there's a disconnect. There's a
Mm-hmm.
disconnect in perception, and there's a disconnect in communication.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about communication. And that's personally as well. That's personally, I have to be the best version of myself today because I'm quarantined with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I got to be good for her too.
Yeah. Well, and it's really no difference. You're in a relationship, and that's the interesting thing too. Your own self leadership and management. Um, that has a lot to do with relationships too, right? I mean, it's not just we don't
Absolutely.
think of leadership just in terms of a work setting, but how do you feel like it impacts? How important is it in a relationship? How does it impact it?
Well, you have to. One thing I think, that a leader, or I guess one of the qualities that I really like in a leader for myself is that feeling of you're safe, that you're safe. Like you can mess up, make a mistake, but it's going to be okay. And that's what I look in a leader at in a job, in a relationship. Um, you know, we're human and we're going to make mistakes. And a good leader, for what it means to me, is that you can trust them.
They've
That's
got
a
your back.
huge part. They got your back. That's the number one thing for me that I look at in a leader, that
Hmm.
they have my back when I'm not so great.
Yeah, well, and that's what that does is it also makes you feel comfortable stepping outside your comfort zone and taking some chances, right? Because somebody's got your back. You
Right.
know that you're not. You've got a leader that supports you no matter what, whether you or a partner that supports you, no matter what.
Exactly.
If you make a mistake, you make a
Exactly.
mistake. Yeah, and there's too many.
Your wife or your husband at home is your leader
Hmm.
because they're supporting you and they're letting you, do what you need to do to be your authentic self, to go right back at it.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's too many leaders that don't understand that you actually, whether it's a family that you're leading or a relationship that you're in, or you're an organizational leader or in hospitality or finance or whatever it is, you have to breed a culture that it's okay to make mistakes, right? It's not if
Mhm.
that's if people are walking around feeling like it's not okay, then they're not taking any chances or taking any risks, and they're not stretching themselves. They're not being creative. They're not trying new things. I mean, think about it in a restaurant. I mean, if a restaurant was absolutely intolerant of mistakes or bad decisions, it would never put new items on the menu, right? It would never change
Sure.
the look of the place. It wouldn't put any specials out. I mean, nothing would change, right? Because they wouldn't want to do anything wrong. Well, that's a sure sign of an organization that's going to fail. And the same thing, really, with relationships too. I'm assuming, right?
And absolutely. Absolutely. Those are good points, John. And more importantly, the guest is going to feel that. The guest is going to feel everything. They feel tension, they feel happy, they feel complacent, they feel all those emotions that a restaurant brings. So, being, a leader, or being a part of the team, you have to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
You have to draw back, and it's hard to do. You are on stage
Mm-hmm.
for that entire time. When you walk into work, boom, whether whatever happened to you outside that door, you got to put on your happy face. You got to get into the role, and you have to take care of the guest. And what a good leader would do is pull you aside and say, "Hey, Helen, what's going on?" Have that conversation, get it out, and then,
Mm-hmm.
back onto the screen.
Do you ever do that? Because that's an interesting point. A lot of times, your gut as a leader may tell you that, something's going on with one of the people that you may be leading. And, some leaders don't do anything about it or act on that, and others do. How important do you think that is? And even if you get somebody and you say, hey, what's going on? You just don't seem yourself, and maybe you're wrong. Maybe, yeah, everything is fine. Is that okay? I mean, should you be, you know,
Absolutely. Absolutely, John. And you know what? I've never, eh, 9 out of 10 times, you're not wrong. You know the people you work with. You know what's going on. They may not want to talk about it, and that's okay, because we all process in a different way. But something's going on. Yeah, I had it happen to myself. I had it happen to myself quite recently, and my leader pulled me aside and said, "This isn't you. What's going on?" And I'll tell you that those were the best 15 minutes of conversation that I've had, you know, with my boss, and it was it was game changing, game changing.
what
I was 10 feet taller, and we had an amazing night that night.
is that right? Was that because you didn't realize what they brought to your attention, or was it there really was something going on that you just appreciated them asking you about it?
I actually did. I had something going on. I had this bottled up anger and just frustration. And, my boss asked me, what it is, be straight with me, tell me. And I felt safe enough to do that. And I did. And it was great. But it starts at the foundation as well. I trusted I could say what I needed to say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, something about me is I'm I'm very genuine, but that's not saying, to pat myself on the back. That's just saying I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So when I'm upset, the whole world knows it. And that's not something, um, that's something I have to control. And that's something that I have to die down. When I'm happy, the whole world knows it too. But, those are addictive personalities.
Mm-hmm.
You could bring, with those emotions, you could bring down the whole restaurant. So you have to really, you got to reel it in. You got to be careful with that.
Yeah. Well, and it's so true, because people also can misread that. They don't know what's going on. I had somebody actually, wasn't that long ago, somebody actually came up to me. This was one of the people that worked for me and said, hey, man, is everything okay? And I don't even remember what it was, but I was having a bad day. And it was something totally unrelated to work and certainly this individual. And I just said, yeah, everything's fine. I can't remember if I shared with him what was going on, but I remember his response, and he said, "Oh, okay, all right." He said, "Is everything okay between you and I?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." He said, "Oh, okay. I thought you were mad at me." And I'm thinking, no, I told him I wasn't at all. But wow, was that good that he brought that up to me, because here I didn't realize it, but my face and my body language was clearly communicating that I was not having a good day. And it was something unrelated to work, certainly unrelated to this individual, but this person felt and was carrying it around that I was mad at them, which definitely would impact their day, maybe even their performance and whatnot. And I would never have known that had he not had the guts to bring that up to me. So it just was a reminder to me how important it is. And you had said it before, that you're always on stage as a leader. And it's not just what you say or even what you do, it's the facial expression, it's the things that you don't say, it's the attitude, it's the
Mm,
energy that you're bringing. So, your example before of the plane and the face mask is so true. You have to take care of yourself before you take care of other people. That's just so critical, and so timely too, based on everything that's going on. So thanks for sharing.
yes.
And it's
Thank
not
you,
too
John.
late to become a an actress. You still have that goal. I'd love to see you on the
Well,
screen
well, I don't know. I mean, might have to, once we can go outside, maybe I'll take
once
a little acting class.
once movie production gets back going again. Yeah.
Right, right.
I,
I do have a lot of people that come into the restaurant and ask, that work on movies in the Boston area. And I'm like, hey, can you get me on stage? Can you get me on stage? Can I watch?
I could
You
see
know,
you
I'm
doing that.
always, I'm always asking, and
Yeah.
I do, because I just think I think it's amazing. I think the whole thing. I love movies. I watch movies all the time, and I just think it's amazing because you get to be someone you're not.
Yeah. It takes you to a different place. You're right. And you know what? That's couldn't be truer than right now. People want an escape. And
Everybody wants an escape, and that's so true.
yeah,
And yeah,
that's awesome. Well, Helen Sullivan, I would love to keep talking with you. We have there's so much good stuff here. What do you want to make sure, if you can leave everybody with one or two final thoughts? What do you think is really important that you want to share with them?
I'd like to talk. One of the major points is that we're going to be talking about is isolation. Isolation right now, it's a two-edged sword. So I ask our listeners to take the time to make sure that you're, getting enough of social connecting with others, that you're using your FaceTime and your Zooms and whatever other, uh, things that you have. Thank God for technology. Where would we be today, now that we're in isolation? And, stay connected to your loved ones and stay connected to your friends and stay connected, um, to those you lead. I think that's extremely important. Like I said, we have a text going around. We're going to have some FaceTime and with my team and uh, it's just so important. I want to know what's going on with everybody that I work with.
Hmm. Well, you're so right. Staying connected, and I think there will be good stuff that comes of this time because it forces everybody to rethink how they live life and how they do stay connected and the creative things that they do. My family down in North Carolina was playing. My sister and family were playing a board game, with five or six other couples at different houses, and they were all playing online. They were playing on Zoom, I guess it was Zoom, and it was they were playing the game Balderdash. So I just thought that was really fun, and what a creative, cool way to try to do your best to bring everybody together and stay connected when you're all in separate houses. So it causes us to think a little bit outside the box, and I think the way that we're going to be living life is going to be different. There's going to be some things that we continue, behaviors or habits that continue, and hopefully for the better, that come out of this, once all the dust clears.
Absolutely. We're going to stay as positive as we can and know that, everyone is going through this. Everyone is faced with some type of illness or financial problem or emotional problem. And I hope that everyone makes it through safe and healthy and be reconnected as soon as we can.
You got it. Well, Helen Sullivan, thank you so much for joining Tomorrow's Leader. You've been a fantastic guest, and I've loved this conversation. There's so much great stuff there. And if we have more time, we'd keep going because I'm sure there's a lot more. But greatly appreciate it, and I hope you come back sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. I appreciate all of your hard work and putting this together.
You
Thank you very much.
You got it. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader. If you liked what you heard, make sure you give the thumbs up. Make sure you leave some comments, subscribe. Make sure you share this. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here in next episode of Tomorrow's Leader. Thanks, everybody. Take care.